Hey guys, it is Michelle and I am here because I have finished the BookRiot 2015 Read Harder Challenge. I am very proud of myself for doing so. If you're not aware, the challenge had 24 different categories of books and you were supposed to, by the end of the year, read one book from each category. So I have finished it in November and feeling pretty proud of that fact. I technically finished in October except for one book, which I had been putting off, so. One thing I learned during this challenge is that I enjoy reading a whole lot more when I can be impulsive about what my next read is going to be. I don't like being locked into a TBR. I prefer it a whole lot more if I'm getting to just choose whatever feels right at the time. Another thing that I learned was I thought that the rating average that I gave the books in the challenge would be quite a bit lower than the rating I gave to books I picked out myself or books that I read through the year anyway. And they really weren't that far off. It was like 3.73 versus 3.91, so almost a negligible difference there, because it turned out I really enjoyed some of the things that were on the list. And some of the categories were like no-brainers I was going to read anyway. A romance novel, a sci-fi novel, a book published this year, those were kind of easy to fill in. So, one thing I learned is that I like short story collections, and I don't think I had read short stories since required reading from high school and college. So, to find out that I like short story collections was kind of shocking. So, in addition to the one that I read for the challenge, I read 4 additional ones throughout the year. I also have a thing for translated fiction. I read one for the challenge. I read 10 more throughout the year. So I clearly like books that were written in another language and translated into English at times. I like the idea of microhistories. I put several of them on my TBR after reading the one for the challenge. However, I haven't actually picked any of them up. So whatever that means, we'll see if I ever pick any of them up. It was kind of affirmed that I don't like classics. In fact, if anything's written, even 2 or 3 years ago, I'm usually not that interested. Not sure why, but for some reason I like the stuff that's been published recently. Another thing I learned is I had really only listened to one audiobook, and that was when I was on a trip traveling by myself in a car, and the book was the perfect, timing. But it was just like pulling teeth to get myself motivated to listen to the audiobook for the challenge, and I ended up swapping it out for the shortest one I could find, and I just really didn't enjoy the experience. So unless I'm traveling alone and I have nothing else to do except, drive, I don't enjoy listening to audiobooks, so didn't know that about myself. Some of the authors that I read for the first time because of the challenge and hope to read more of are David Eagleman. He is fascinating to me. He is a neuroscientist from Houston, Texas, and he's done a TV show about the brain. He's written several nonfiction books about the brain. He wrote the short story collection that I read and loved that had to do with tales of the afterlife. But his TED Talks are amazing, and if you do nothing else, I recommend that you check him out there, but I look forward to reading more from him in the future. John Scalzi is a wonderful new sci-fi author that I found because of the challenge. Mary Roach, who writes microhistories and makes them hilarious. So glad I ran across her. And A.S. King, I'd had on my TBR for a while, but I just kept putting off, and I have a feeling I never would have gotten around to it, but I really liked her writing style and hope to check out more from her. So that kind of wraps up my reflections on the Read Harder Challenge. I really enjoyed it. I can tell that it has affected my TBR. The shape of my TBR right now is very different than it would have been had I not done the challenge. And it did kind of steer me away from YA, kind of back to the adult realm and kind of back to my roots. So that's kind of a good thing. Not that I'm knocking YA, but, sometimes I want to read stuff about people who are my age and not, teenagers anymore. So, it was a great experience. I'm so glad I did it. If I did it again, like I said, I would make a couple of changes and be more relaxed about my TBR for it, but really enjoyed it overall. So hope you enjoyed the upcoming montage. Thank you so much for watching and happy reading.